Now, it's been a little while since I've done a video about the Yamaha, and after a little while realizing we're in our little stay at home and play nice with others from a distance, decided I was going to give you guys a tour of the clutch for the Yamaha. Pulled the bike apart a while ago. I'm still waiting to do some stuff to finish doing the motor, but I figured I can give you a tutorial or kind of a little breakdown on our clutch basket. When you pull the cover off, you pretty much see the clutch intact. This is your full clutch assembly. Behind that, you've got a gear that I'm not going to talk about too much. That just deals with your external and secondary gears and getting the bike going. When you open it up, you've got a few things. You got your clutch basket, you got your clutch cover. Right on the outside here, you see a bunch of little fingers. I don't, because the camera viewfinder is on the other side, but you'll see that I ain't got enough light, so hold on. Alright, so when you look at the clutch assembly, obviously this is out of the bike. You'll see the clutch cover, 5 hold down screws. See outside of the clutch basket, this aluminum part here with the fingers coming out. The inside parts protruding out here, those are the fingers of the clutch fibers, the clutch discs themselves, and the space in between, those are your clutch steels. Whether you're working on a motorcycle clutch or if you're working on an automatic transmission, the clutches actually work very much the same. They're submerged in fluid, it keeps them lubricated. There's certain additives in there that help keep the friction, but what it is a pressure plate. It expands and contracts. When you're going down the road, on this particular setup with most motorcycles, when you're not holding the clutch, there's these springs. 5 of them most of the time. Some bikes will have 4, some will have 6. Anyways, today I just wanted to give you a tour. This is out of our Yamaha. Ours is a 72 AT2 125 2-stroke. There's a lot of bikes that go from the 60s into the 70s that have this exact clutch. Most of the other ones have something very similar. But as far as this clutch and the clutch design, the information in here is good for just about every motorcycle out there. So stick around, grab a pen and paper. There will be a quiz at the end. Just kidding. First thing when this is in the bike, if you're initially taking it apart, is you're going to see this cover. What you need to do is remove these 5 screws to remove this clutch cover right here. Once you take them and loosen them all up, do it in an even pattern, then the top cover comes off. The cover comes off. It's called a pressure plate. There's a side inside here. It's kind of dirty, but you can see around here, this surface right here rides along this clutch fiber material right here. This edge helps compress the clutch, keeping it engaged when you're in gear and you're moving. After you pull the cover off, you'll notice that you have a spline shaft coming through, and what you're going to see is you're going to see a bolt just on top of this washer. Since this is off of the bike, the bolt's out with my parts out in the garage. When you undo the bolt, to undo the bolt, you'll have to actually bend one of these tabs. If you can see a little bit of this corner right here, how it's a little bit dented. After they, from the manufacturer, when they tighten down that bolt, they'll actually take one of these corners, fold it over onto one of the facings, and that's how they prevent that bolt from walking out. So this is one kind of lock washer right here. You take the bolt out. After you fold this comes out, and then you've got the inner basket, you've got your clutch pack, and you've got your outer basket. Every one of these comes apart about the same. You'll notice very small grooves and a lot of them on the inside, and they're very large on the outside. What that does, how it works, I can't show you here because it's still a little bit stuck, but the inside and the outside, when the clutch is when the clutch is released, when you're holding the clutch down, it releases the pressure here, and what that does, it allows the fibers in the outside to spin freely of your steels, which are hard to see. I'll pull one out. The steels and how their fingers engage on the inner basket. When there's no pressure, these two will actually spin independently of each other. When the clutch is released, or the clutch lever is released and pressure is applied, they hold together, locking the outside and the inside together. That takes the energy going from the inner hub attaches it directly to the outer hub, and that goes to your transmission and it makes the bike drive. When I pulled these apart, they'd been sitting, the crankcase was pretty dry. I had to actually pry these apart. Most of the time when you see a clutch and you see the steels, it's a nice clean surface, and you'll have a little bit of, on this one it's pocked up or dimpled all the way around, creating a rough surface. Automatic transmission, sometimes you'll go through and sandblast them or media blast them, and it'll actually roughen up the surface a bit, creating some, making it more coarse, allowing it to grab the clutch material. Because this sat so long, you see these little squares in here. That's from the varnish and from the clutches sitting dry so long. At that point, that tells me I'm going to end up replacing the clutches and the steels, or a full clutch pack. And they stack clutch over steel, clutch over steel, clutch over steel. Since I had it apart, I figured I can do a video showing the assemblies and give you a good idea as far as how they work. Again, you got frictions and steels, and most everyone's about the same. The dimensions might be a little bit different, but if I showed you a picture of any single one, it'd be the same. Being that that bolt was already removed, the inside basket comes out. Those are some bearings, I'll show you those in a minute, but the inner basket comes out independently. You still have this steel on here. Take that off real quick. When you end up replacing a full clutch assembly, you'll end up getting a collection of about 5 or 6 clutch fiber discs or clutch discs and clutch steels. It'll look something like, well, it'll look something kind of like that. The inner basket slides out from the outer basket, and if you notice, I've got a couple bearings in here. They're washers and some flat bearings. Those, when it's assembled, allows the inside to spin freely. This is where your clutch action happens. When the clutch is disengaged, it locks, causing both inside and outside to spin together. When you pull the clutch, activating the clutch, then the inside will spin free and the bike's not going to go anywhere. You pull it apart, you'll have a little needle bearing. You'll see a couple needles right up in here, and spacers and washers, and they sandwich themselves together as a little assembly. And last, this is the outside basket. A couple things you want to notice on this when you take it apart. On the inside, there's a bushing. Sometimes it'll be slotted or grooved. This one's got a bunch of little holes and dimples in there. That is a bushing for the shaft, the inside shaft, to ride against while this spins. When you pull the clutch apart, a couple things to assess are the condition of that bushing. You want it to be nice and even all the way around, no wear spots. They're about a bronze color, and you want to make sure they are that bronze color, and that usually tells you that there's no wear on them. There are other tests as well, I'm not going to get into those, but they deal with side play. When you have a shaft going through, how much side play and how much wiggle you have. The other things you want to look at on the gear, you always want to make sure there's no damage, there's no scratches or anything else around the gear teeth, and there's something called a wear pattern. If you look at the facing of the teeth, you're going to see where it meshes with another gear. You want to make sure that that pattern all the way around is the same and consistent and right in the center. The last thing you want to consider looking at, and it's really important, the most common part that wears, are these slots in here. Over time, you've got the clutch fiber which sits into that tooth, and they vibrate back and forth. And over time, with all those clutches, it'll wear little grooves left and right and leave a bunch of them in there. It is very mild. You can take a file and you can clean them up and make them smooth again. If they're really bad, you need to replace it. If you put a clutch together and if it's got those grooves, there's a good chance the clutch isn't going to work right. It's either not going to disengage or it's not going to engage, and you're going to have a lot of drivability issues with that. So pay attention when you pull this apart and inspect it. See what you need to do as far as rejuvenating those surfaces. When you go back together, this is clearly old parts, so I'm not going to be using any of this. But you would reinstall this on the bike. You would install this. I usually go bearings down first. I place the inner basket in. Then you take your clutch. Obviously this one's done, so we're throwing this one away. But you start with a fiber, then steel, and it takes a moment to line these up. You got to play with them just a little bit so they want to grab. They're pretty specific on how they go in. There's not one mark you have to line up to, but it's getting all those fingers to go into the grooves at the same time. That's where the art is. Also note, when you get new clutches and you end up replacing them, the manufacturer most times will tell you before installing your new clutch kit, generally they want you to soak it in either automatic transmission fluid or the gear oil that is going to be run in the bike. So make sure you look at your manufacturer's recommendations and see what they want for you. That way, if you get the surface and the surfaces are prepped right, it'll give you years of surface, depending on how you drive. It'll always be, when going together, it always alternates clutch steel, clutch steel, clutch steel, clutch steel. So that's that, and here's my clutch. I'm sorry. Your repair manual should tell you how many clutches, how many steels in the order to put together, because once in a while you'll have variations to it. You'll stack those in. You'll take and place, you put those all in. In this particular bike, with that shaft coming through, you'll put this washer on, you'll tighten down that nut, and you'll bend a tab. When you pull this apart and replace this, it's always recommended to replace that steel washer. I've used them in the past, but the problem is once you start bending them, there's chances that pieces can break off and end up in your motor, and that could be catastrophic. But you put the new washer in, you put the new nut on there and tighten it per manufacturer recommendations. This one had a hole that this push rod, or this actuating rod, would actually go in and rest inside there. And again, this is the rod that pushes out, relieving the pressure off your clutch pressure plate. This would go on, you would line up the holes, and starting one corner in a certain pattern, you would go through in a circular pattern or alternating every screw kind of pattern until you tighten it down to manufacturer specifications. It is important, very important on these, to tighten these up exactly the way that they say. These bolts don't tighten all the way down, and that spring tension can be how tight you tighten the screws down. That can affect it, causing it to have too much pressure on one side and dragging, not having enough pressure, or having too much pressure and having a drag as well. So follow those recommendations very carefully. Once they're all tightened, you're good to go to finish up putting up the bike. I hope this helps you out. Let me know if you have any questions, any comments. If you got any pictures of projects, feel free to shoot them. Feel free to send them my way. If you like the information that we're giving you, feel free to like and hit that subscribe button, because that helps me. That helps me create these project videos for you. Thank you for watching.